I'm a DJ boy, going to Dcentral, minty NFT, from the DeFi, being crypto poor but JPay rich.
So without further ado, let's look at what are the mechanisms in which we can scale and speed up layer 1 and layer 2 solutions. Please give me a hand in welcoming to the stage our moderator for the panel, Mr. Simon.
Hello, hello, welcome everybody. I will now call out all of our panelists here. This is the Scalability panel to talk about how we can scale blockchain to the mainstream. Everyone can come on out and we'll do self-introductions, will be the easiest to do. Thank you. Thank you everybody. Thank you for being here. Let's slide over. All right, so Elena, can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and your company? We'll go down the row, Brad and on.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Elena Sinelnikova. I'm CEO and co-founder of METIS. METIS is, so first of all, of course, this is a layer 2, but we also the platform for the economy. We're building a platform for not only for Web3, but also we're right now working with a lot of Web2 customers that would like to onboard on blockchain.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm James, the CEO of Rio, and we have a layer 1 blockchain called Rio Chain, as well as a layer 2 called Mana Protocol, which is a gasless games chain for GameFi projects and Metaverse. We have a game development studio where we create new projects for the Metaverse, and we also have a digital securities exchange called Rio Stocks, where we're licensed to be able to trade fractionalized NFTs as well as security tokens. So, pleasure to be here.
Hey everybody, I'm Bradley Stephenson, a member of the Syscoin Foundation Board, nonprofit. Syscoin is a layer 1 that's very focused on security and decentralization as the foundation for the capstone of scalability through a modular architecture. We retain proof of work. We solve the problems associated with proof of work that people often bring up, right? So we're heading into some really interesting times with the emergence of layer 2 for computation that I think will be very relevant to mass adoption, right? And we like to maintain focus on the things that gave blockchain value to begin with, which were decentralization and security, and it's, we need to keep focus on that.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeff. I'm the community lead at Kadena, where I focus on attracting, engaging, and growing the community from outside and within the Kadena ecosystem. And if you don't know about Kadena, we're the only scalable and secure proof of work layer 1 blockchain out there. That's a handful, but I could explain more about our scalability in a bit.
Great, thank you all. Really appreciate it. Thank you, and I'll introduce myself very briefly. My name is Simon Mcdonough. I'm your moderator today. I've been in the space since 2017, worked under a couple different banners, including a company you might know from back in the day called Block Team Ventures, which I co-founded. Now I'm working with Gravity Ventures, a Web3 venture studio based between Dubai and the United States. I also am a strategic advisor for Kudos, which is a layer 1 carbon neutral blockchain built on Cosmwasm and Cosmos with a layer 2 distributed cloud computing platform that powers and will be powering a lot of the dApps and metaverses on all major blockchains. So that being said, I think this is an issue, scalability is an issue that we've been, obviously, everyone that's been in blockchain for any amount of time has been trying to wrap their heads around for a long time. There's always been a trade-off, right, between security, decentralization, transaction costs, throughput and whatnot. And the onset of layer 2s and everything that we're seeing today, along with the bridges and interoperability, are all trying to get to that same point of finding a way to scale to the masses. That's why I'm very excited to be speaking with you all, because all these companies are very, very impressive they're all doing their part in trying to achieve what we all want to achieve in really touching every single industry and really bringing blockchain and our solutions to the billions of people around the world. So that being said, love to get a response from each of you on like what is each of your companies doing at a high level to address scalability with the grander hopes of affecting not only your community but the communities beyond your companies. Maybe I'll start at the very end here with Jeff first.
Hey everyone. So at Kadena, we're kind of unique in that we have solved the scalability issue that has plagued proof of work blockchains like from Bitcoin to Ethereum. And how we do this is by having a braided chain architecture where we have multiple individual chains, think like Ethereum chain or a Bitcoin chain, braided together to form a set of chains to form this network. And so as you increase or add more chains to our network, you combine the individual throughput of each individual chain to increase the overall throughput of the entire network. So Kadena started off with 10 chains, and we scaled from 10 to 20 chains during the summer of 2020, and that increased throughput. And so we can scale from 20 chains to 50 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000. You name the chain, we can scale to it. And so this dramatically increases the benefit inherent to proof of work, which is security and decentralization, and then reduces the inherent disadvantages so we can increase throughput infinitely and take no additional hash rate. And so by accessing this kind of key to unlimited scalability, we're able to bring proof of work back at the forefront of blockchain adoption and leading, the final stages of bringing blockchain to the masses.
Yes, Syscoin has been quite a ride. So I've been involved with the project since about late 2016, and I've seen a lot of evolution, with our development and our roadmap. So, what we are essentially, as I said, is a layer one that is modular in its architecture. We're merge mined with Bitcoin. So what we're doing is inheriting a significant percentage of security from the Bitcoin mining network. Typically right now it varies between 25 and 30% of Bitcoin's miners supporting the Syscoin network in terms of hash power. That's not without its flaws though. So naive merge mining is still subject to 51% attacks. It still lacks finality. And some of these other things. One thing that it is great with is that it's carbon neutral, right? So Bitcoin miners do not have to extend any additional work in order to help mine Syscoin. So there's a two-way incentive here. We're inheriting the decentralized proof of work from Bitcoin, as well as those miners are receiving block rewards, right? So Satoshi Nakamoto put forth merge mining, a good while back, right? It's been overlooked. Another thing is through our modular architecture, we're able to solve problems with proof of work that are pretty commonly brought up. Things like 51% attacks, the lack of finality. We're able to provide finality actually in a very timely fashion. So that leads essentially to safer DeFi, a carbon neutral layer one that is quite secure. And as far as scalability is concerned, we're really looking to implement rollups. We feel that that's really the gateway to mass adoption as far as the user experience is concerned. The layer one with a rollup type environment is essentially abstracted away from the end user. So perhaps the layer one has a longer block time than one would expect. Maybe it's much longer than 10 seconds. Well, If the security assumptions on the layer 2 are not violating the security assumptions on the layer 1, and all of that passes through, then there's not really a need for the layer 1 to have like super short block target, right? You can focus completely on decentralization and security at the layer 1 for the most part, and data availability as well. That's very important for rollups too. But this frees us up from being kind of stuck within this monolithic architectural paradigm where we're trying to force layer 1 to do everything for everybody, right? We're trying to force it to scale. We're trying to force the fees to be low, and all of this, when blockchain in reality, what it's best at is decentralized secure settlement. And layer 2 is really best for things like mass adoption, incredible throughput, and flexibility for business models, right? So yeah, that's a little bit about what we're doing.
No, I think you might have answered a few of my questions all in one, so I appreciate that. No, but go ahead. No, that's very valuable. I was just actually thinking while you guys were both speaking, like we should, there should be more associations just dedicated to scalability and just like focused around getting together, not only amongst ourselves, but also with policymakers and everything else to really have that convergence of the mainstream and the blockchain worlds as we want to see it in the future. But go ahead, and love to hear from you on addressing scalability and how you do it at Rio.
Yeah, sure. So through Rio Chain, we're built around Parity's substrate framework for the Polkadot ecosystem because we think that the future of interoperability of blockchains is necessary for scalability because it's not just going to be one solution to solve everything, right? There's going to be different blockchain applications for all sorts of different use cases, whether it be for GameFi, Metaverse, supply chain management, health data management. Some blockchains might need more private data, others need more public data, depending on what they're doing. So with Rio Chain, we have up to 3,000 transactions per second, which we think is good at this point, but we'll continue working on the scalability of it. And we're expanding our validator set now. We also have the Frontier toolset, which allows us to connect to the Ethereum virtual machine, EVM. That way we can easily onboard Ethereum-based apps onto Rio Chain. As well, we have the Mana protocol, which is a layer 2 solution that's going to enable a gasless games chain. So this is going to be really important because when you're playing a blockchain game or you're in the metaverse, you don't want to have to click every 30 seconds and say, yes, I confirm this transaction, yes, and then wait for the blocks to confirm. Like that would be a very bad gaming experience. So, we think it's important to have that kind of run in the background, to have some of the data off-chain, some of the data on-chain. Otherwise, it would be too expensive and really not needed because, most gamers, they want a fun game. They don't want to have to, confirm things all the time. So we think that this is the answer, is to have interoperability between blockchains, which is something that Rio Chain's enabling in order to have many different solutions to the scalability issue.
Yeah, and a few key words there that you pointed out were run in the background. I think that's one thing that we need to really cement in our heads, right? Everything that we're talking about here should really be thought about like, hey, how's it running in the background? What is the real user experience? Like, we're not thinking of the internet, right? When like, hey, what's the code behind this this web domain and how is it built? That's kind of what you guys are building and everything else. We got to get to the point of scalability where that's kind of forgotten about from a consumer facing and business facing perspective, the UI UX of it. But yeah, great answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so at METIS, what we do, and that's what Brad talked about, roll-up. So roll-up is basically bundling, taking millions of transactions, bundling them all together and committing them into the L1 at once. So that brings ultimate scalability. Though, of course, it is creating other problems. And this is the problems that we're solving with METIS by committing not all data at once, but it's actually partial data and then data on demand as well, which allowed us to bring the cost of the transaction to 1 cent on Ethereum right now, which is a great achievement, and we right now the cheapest L2 on Ethereum. But at the same time, we're not compromising the security, because we are actually enhancing the security by covering all the fraud proofs, the incentives, and also the decentralizing more the sequencer. For example, those actors who are posting transactions to L1, majority of rollups right now, they only have one. It means that if it's compromised, then it is like finita. We are addressing that as well, so by decentralizing that in the peer network, and where everyone has a turn to be a sequencer and be incentivized and punished for the good and bad actions as well. So that is what is our, I would say, revolutionary technology at METIS, and at this point we did solve the blockchain trilemma problem. We're not compromising security, we're actually enhancing it, and we are bringing the cost just to the minimum, and the speed of the transactions as well to the maximum. That's what we do. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Elena, back to you. What would you say are, in your view, the most promising interoperability and bridge solutions out today that are really solving kind of scalability issues today? Or if you want to think about it, what do you anticipate in the future that, in the same vein, that's exciting, that's going to be coming out in 2022 and beyond from an interoperability bridging perspective?
So again, so bridging perspective and interoperability, it has to be for the reason. So what reason, what problem we're trying to solve by creating these bridges and interoperability? It's actually to enhancing either speed or security, or the lowering the cost. I think that's the reasons why it should be interoperable. And yeah, like for example, like one of the examples has storing data, for example, not only on one chain, but on other chains as well, to first of all, to include other players into verifying the data. So that brings more, not only the interoperability, but brings it for the exact reason of the security. And decentralization, in my opinion, is the ultimate security. More chains we have, more interoperable we are, more secure we are, because we are more decentralized.
Yeah, feel free, it's open questions, so feel free if you have any views or comments on that.
Yeah, sure. So as far as bridges and interoperability, I always encourage users to look at the underlying design, understand the security implications of a system that you're using. Every time you use a bridge from one ecosystem to another, there could be completely different security assumptions there. So the more you're using these systems, obviously, kind of the more risk you're taking on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a decision that people need to make, and make it an informed decision, right? But bridges are absolutely critical. There are so many different architectures out there, and different layer ones, that we absolutely need portability, and they can be used as a means for users towards a kind of scalability. If another chain or another system has essentially more runway, then that's a quick way to move their value to something that will be a little bit more ideal for whatever their use case is, right? So I think bridges will continue to be important. I think the time will come for enterprise blockchains and private blockchains. I think they'll kind of have a time in the sun at some point, particularly when regulations become clearer. And I think bridges will be absolutely key for them as well.
Yeah, following through on the bridge topic, I think you're going to have so many different solutions to blockchain scalability, right? And if you don't have the various networks being able to move assets across each other, then you're going to miss out on millions of users, because each user has their own sort of favorite ecosystem, right? You have your ETH fanboys, you have your Cardano fanboys, you have fanboys from every ecosystem, right? and girls, right? And so I think it's important, if you're building a game, you're building a metaverse, you want to be able to support as many blockchains as possible. Obviously you focus on one probably to start, but if you want to bring over those millions of users into your game, onto your ecosystem, you inherently need some sort of cross-chain solution. You need some sort of bridge. And whether it be cross-chain DeFi, which is called CrossFi, it's quite interesting how that's been evolving. We saw certainly the risks of that. There have been hacks on a number of bridges, but it's a space that's quickly evolving, and I think it's something that we learn from each hack. We grow stronger, more resilient. It doesn't mean stop building bridges, it just means let's build them better.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, that's a great point. So when I think of that question, I think about how interoperability and bridges at first help with scalability, where projects that are congested or aren't as scalable will use kind of other projects and use their underlying network to scale and bring users to use your project. And so what Kadena does is already has solved that scalability issue on that layer one on that base layer. So users can essentially, projects and users can come and trade their favorite tokens and kind of have that multi-protocol kind of system where you could trade your ETH, you could trade your Solana, you could trade your NFTs all on Kadena. And Kadena is fundamentally a bridge itself, like Chainweb, our consensus mechanism that I was telling you guys earlier about the braided architecture. That is, each individual chain is a bridge to one another. And so we kind of have internal bridges, if you could think of it that way. So with Pact making these bridges between chains easier, we can bridge to different protocols as well, just as easy. So, yeah.
Yeah, the whiteboarding session will be right immediately after this panel. No, but it's all very interesting. Hopefully we have some people who are quite technical in the crowd as well, because this is very valuable. And live streaming from home and around the world and online. I want to get into something that's very interesting that's really come up in the last couple of years around parachains, as well as app-specific blockchains and enterprise blockchains. So how do you see one, two, or all three of these improving scalability in our industry? And then whoever wants to speak first can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I think obviously parachains are quite a useful solution. I'm a bit biased since RioChain is competing for a parachain slot. But what Gavin Wood and the Parity team has built for the Polkadot ecosystem is quite innovative, and having the connective layer of Frontier to connect to Ethereum virtual machine, to be able to port those smart contracts over. One of the things they did, they created this like layer 0 blockchain that is the shared security layer for all the parachains that build on top. And so they focus specifically on the security and the governance, and they leave the scalability to each individual parachain, which I think is a good model. And I'm not 100% certain of Cosmos's whole ecosystem, but I think it's got a similar type of model in how they handle with the app-specific blockchains. We have Terra being built around the Cosmos SDK. Obviously there was issues with that ecosystem, but it wasn't really based around the security, although they did have some issues toward the end before they switched to the new version of Terra. But this is a great example of a flexible ecosystem, and one that's able to adapt and evolve, and the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem wasn't taken down by issues on one specific blockchain. So I think that's an important key, is to segregate the risk so that you don't have systemic risk that takes down the entire crypto ecosystem based on one chain failing. That would obviously be a big problem in architecture. And then for enterprise blockchains, I mean, I really do see, I might get some, Bitcoin maximalists to be angry about this, but I do see enterprise blockchains having a very useful place in the blockchain ecosystem. I mean, you're not going to have probably big companies like Walmart, using the Ethereum blockchain. I just, maybe somehow, eventually, maybe they'll use it as a layer 2 to their enterprise blockchain for some sort of data that they need to have secured or something. But, I think the idea is to have as many people building blockchain tools as possible, regardless of if it's decentralized, centralized, what is the underlying technology, what is the value, and how do we get more developers from Web 2 into Web 3? Because when they start with an enterprise chain, they'll eventually want to branch outward.
Absolutely, and also off-chain solutions as well, and the interoperability between permissionless, and off-chain is very, very important. I know we're running up on time here, but anyone else have any quick thoughts on parachains or anything of the sort?
Yeah, so for Kadena, we initially had a permission blockchain, and so despite having solved that scalability and issue from the layer 1 protocol, we still feel like there's a need for a permission blockchain. Our permission blockchain is called Corp, and essentially, since projects already have that security, that decentralization, that throughput on that base layer, they can still add their projects that requires reversibility, fast finality, privacy on that layer 2, and this could apply to healthcare, law, real estate, gaming, where you want that fast finality and also privacy of that individual user's information, so doctors could share your medical records really quick and without having to go through bureaucracy.
Yeah, the only thing that I want to add just very briefly is I think that private chains, I think they have their use cases. I think ultimately in the end that open public blockchains will rule, and the reason why relates to trust enclaves, someone using a private chain, an external party may not necessarily want to trust that. It may not be decentralized really to the degree that gave blockchain value, right? So, and there's other things as well, but I think as regulations emerge and become clearer, there will be a time when private blockchains will be relevant, a lot more relevant than they are now, but I think gradually enterprises will move towards open public blockchains with compliance systems that are working with open chains.
Elena, final word?
Yeah, and what I think is also the problem is not as private chains, it's private transactions. So it can be also abstracted on that level, on a transactional level.
Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey, Bradley, James, Elena. Please give a hand to the panelists and to the panel if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and that concludes the Scalability panel. And there we go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.